What made you first realize your parents weren't very smart? I was luckily at school working on the newspaper when this happened, but apparently my stepmom was heating oil to make tostadas when it caught fire. My stepmom screamed for my dad and ran over to the sink to grab the hose. Luckily he stopped her from killing them both, but then decided the best course of action was to pick up the flaming pan and attempt to carry it outside. I walked into a kitchen that smelled like burning oil with a giant scorch mark on the floor and black marks up and down the cabinet's walls near our back door. My stepmom has also attempted to argue that Alaska is attached to the United States and that I was misinformed about what grade levels were in the school I attended. My mom got distracted by showing my sister and I something on our computer once and had some oil catch fire. When she couldn't smother it out, she used our fire extinguisher to put it out. 'Cause you know, that's what it's for. For what it's worth, at least your dad stopped her from pouring water on it. When my dad asked me, 9 years old, how to spell a simple word, I started paying attention then. I saw how he had a bunch of credit cards, was repaying loans, spent tons of money on cigarettes and dumb crap, never used the stove or oven because he couldn't follow recipes, so all we ate was TV dinners and ramen noodles, refused to ever get any government assistance for anything. As I got older, he blamed us for his financial downfall. I started having mental breakdowns over going to McDonald's because he made me feel intense guilt over it. When I became an adult, I realized it wasn't my fault. I didn't bankrupt my dad. He was just a freaking idiot who blamed his inability to budget or ask for help on his kids. When I had a screaming match with my mother that 8/16 is equivalent to 50%. I even drew a bar, divided it into 16 pieces and colored in 8 of the blocks. She still didn't believe me. My dad was giving me the bird and the bees conversation when I was about 15. He tells me don't go around just sleeping with every girl you think is good looking. You will end up with a kid you didn't expect. Make sure she is good for more than a roll in the hay because she won't look that good forever. It was in that moment I knew he was reflecting on his own experiences with my mother. That started a snowball reaction of realization. Yee, we're gonna need to go down this rabbit hole. They fell for one of those there is a virus on your computer, call Microsoft now things. Then hailed me as a hero when I walked in, pulled up a page on my own computer to show them it's crap, and told them to get off the phone with the guy immediately. I love them deeply, but they aren't very bright with computer stuff. Watching a documentary on dinosaurs about 10 years ago when my mother enters the room and actually says to me, you don't believe they actually existed, do you? Couldn't freaking believe it. My mom, her half of the family are from KY, and they fought with me so much whenever I told them KY was not part of the Confederacy. Try seeing Confederate flags in West Virginia, the only state created by breaking away from the Confederacy to stay in the Union. The irony is off the charts. I knew my parents weren't smart before this, but I was watching Bridge of Spies with my mom and she asked me what the Cold War was. My mother believes that almost anything can be cured with homeopathy, essential oils, and supplements. She distrusted all doctors. She believes that my brother is on the spectrum because he got the MMR vaccine. She might not have vaccinated me and my brother at all if my dad hadn't insisted. I love the woman to death, but I can't talk to her about health stuff, it's infuriating. I had really bad acne my whole teenage years. It wasn't until I was older that I realized my mom was treating my acne with diluted water instead of actual medicine. Could have saved me a whole lot of scars later in life. It wasn't obvious from a single interaction, but I noticed once I was in school. Her response to everything I was interested in was I don't care about X. I don't know why anyone would concern themselves with X, and effectively never knew anything about really any topic. If I did ask her what she was interested in, she didn't have anything to say or share that wasn't about spending my dad's money. She did not work. She only judged people based on their wealth, how their house looked when I was dropped off. Again, this is a woman who never had a career. Her parents paid for everything until her second husband, my stepdad, swooped in and picked up the bill for her life. She could never articulate why it was a potential warning sign to her. She would just call them names and make it harder for me to leave the house or spend time with friends. She was unable and unwilling to learn how to explain anything. I'm talking the simplest things. There were no steps for anything like hygiene or life skills of any kind. If I didn't learn in school or from my grandparents, then I taught myself, and she would get violently angry and belittle me when I didn't know how to do something. She had a horrible temper, so I just stopped bringing home things like report cards. I was on a roll all through school, but she would take away all of my belongings, anything I liked or enjoyed, so my room would just be empty. If I didn't achieve 90s or higher in every subject, she would scream at me for being a slacker. I just stopped bringing home the report cards and she never asked or noticed. No listening skills whatsoever. Inability to understand someone outside of her has a different experience and becomes very upset when that reality is broken. She gets all of her news from US or People magazine, but I have never seen her read a real book. Oh, also her and my stepdad's hobbies are gambling and drinking excessively. I can sort of understand my stepdad's perspective as he has a super stressful job and is not stupid, but has very low emotional intelligence, so he just represses all of his feelings and then goes wild on gambling. But my mom's life is the opposite of stressful and she gets super into recklessly throwing away money. ETA. I made this list because as a child it is really upsetting when this is all you know, and you think something is wrong with you. But your parent can absolutely be a narcissist, and also not very smart. It doesn't mean that it is you that is the problem though. They couldn't admit there was a tiny possibility I might know better than them on literally anything except computers, where I'm apparently a god who knows the ins and outs of every device ever. The latter doesn't bother me as much as the former does. I've literally cited textbooks at her before in subjects she has absolutely no knowledge in, and she still insists she's right because she's the mother. Both of them used to be analytical and rational people, until you put them in front of a PC. Then they become like little children crying all the time. I guess I'm spoiled in this department. My dad is who I turn to if I have computer issues. Growing up I always had trouble with math. My mom was one of those types that thinks I'm smart enough, I didn't need school, and cut class as much as she could. So when I was having trouble making sense of some of my 9th grade algebra, she convinced me she knew the material and helped me with my homework. I got an F. Not laughing at you at all, but this just reminded me of the episode of The Office where Michael tries to help this little girl at a rival paper company with her math homework. Hope things got better for you with time. I stepped on some water in the kitchen and asked my mum, why is there water on the floor? Her response, that's not water, it's melted ice. My dad got me a small carton of milk and a small carton of chocolate milk and said I didn't know which one you wanted, so I got chocolate and vanilla. That's kinda sweet. I don't think they're stupid or anything, but the way they behave in their relationships, they're divorced and both have remarried, makes me realize that they are flawed humans who don't always think logically. Noodles and rice are health foods, you have to eat a lot of them. I don't know why you are getting chubby. I love my mom, but her nutrition theories are horrible. To be fair, her entire life this kind of nutrition info was hammered into her head. It hasn't been until recently that it's being somewhat reverted. When my mom looked at me with serious conviction and said Osama bin Laden is the father of Barack Obama, she said to watch the news at 3 AM. That's when they tell the truth. My parents still are the same way. I love them, but Obama isn't the king of the Illuminati. When I was younger I'd often get extremely frustrated with my mom because of how hard it was to get her to understand things. When I got my ADHD diagnosis at 25 and started treatment, I slowly came to see our similarities and realizing that so much of what frustrated me was just how she'd learned to cope with her undiagnosed ADHD and severe anxiety issues. It's made me a lot more patient with her and has really improved our relationship. Same, except throughout my diagnosis my mom said I didn't have ADHD and that I just wasn't trying hard enough. Still haven't forgiven her for that. The moment my mother tried to convince me of the following: saving is always better than investing. Always. When traveling out of country always use traveler's checks, and never a credit card. Take your car into the shop for everything, and no matter what you think you know, don't trust yourself when it comes to anything mechanical. The moment you disagree with her you are telling her how to feel and are therefore a misogynistic butthole. Therefore, The only logical conclusion is that you must agree with her on everything. Smoking, therefore, isn't bad for you. Physical well-being has nothing to do with emotional well-being, and my father is wrong about absolutely everything. If you disagree with any of that, then you're sexist. My father isn't smart because he has no backbone and has never once approached my mother regarding her craziness. Whoa, this felt good, doctor. Thanks for the session. We made a breakthrough today. I'll see you next week. The vacuum has been broken forever. My uncle gave us a new vacuum for Christmas. My mom threw it out because it was green and she doesn't like green. Every time I tell them we need a new vacuum, she says we don't have the money. But we had the money to go on a trip to Disney World and buy new couches in the past couple months. Both my parents are idiots when it comes to prioritizing. Also anything when it comes to keeping any kind of pet. Dry sand for hermit crabs is unacceptable, and a 5-gallon pot without a filter in the heat of summer is unacceptable for a goldfish. My dad was a janitor his whole life, raising 9 kids. My mom lost lots of money in multi-level marketing schemes. They both believe in very weird conspiracies and they think everything causes cancer. My dad could never figure out computers. I still remember a time my dad came home furious that work wanted him to take a test on the computer and he said computers aren't useful at all. I don't see why we don't just stick to pen and paper. There are plenty of stories about my parents' ignorance. I still love them though. I remember my dad telling me computers were just a fad and wouldn't be around in 5 years. That was probably 20 years ago. Here was probably the biggest indicator. I was 12 or so at the time. I got dropped off at the bookstore for an afternoon, was given some money to get something to eat, drink, maybe a book or Pokemon cards, and enough money to call when I needed a ride. This was pre-cell phone, so I had to use a payphone. Calls were 50 cents at the time. I burned up $3 calling every 10 minutes until my mom answered. It was 4 when I started, 5ish when she finally picked up. Hello. Hey mom. Feigning that I wasn't annoyed or upset. I'm ready to get picked up from books. I just dropped you off. Mom, that was almost 5 hours ago. Fine. I'll be right there. In unfavorable traffic. It was maybe a 20-minute drive. 40 minutes later, I called her back. Hello. Hey mom. I'm out the door. Tone of me inconveniencing her. Click. 40 more minutes go by. Call again. Get the voicemail message. With a clear tone that I was being a bother to her. Hey everyone. I went to go get you by match 36. I'll be back later. My parents always had the same voicemail message. So I was A, confused, and B, had my anxiety get overwhelming as I felt as though I was being bothersome to her and whoever may have tried to call. My mother arrived about 15 minutes later, chided me on the ride home for just staying up there and reading books instead of trying to work on bettering myself. After the anxiety swelling had decreased, I came to the conclusion that my mother was implicating I had to go and make social status improving friends and going to parties, and that the path I was going on wasn't going to lead to a happy or respected lifestyle. I started doing drugs a few years later, and even though I quit a long time ago, the effects against my personal life still linger. I also stopped reading as much. I've been trying to get back into it lately. Causing someone to read less is an awful thing. If you're getting back into it, I fully recommend Goodreads. Lovely community even if you don't read a lot. I'm glad you're doing better. My dad is actually a very smart man, but my mother, oh god. Putting aside all of the idiotic parenting things she's done that have fricked me up, here are some of the amusing things. When I was a kid I was, and still am, absolutely obsessed with animals and books. So I had this book about the classification of animals, and I mentioned to my mom that insects were a type of animal. She insisted I was wrong, and I was confused, cause I was like 7. So my mom must know better than me, right? But I had also been reading about this less than a half hour ago, so I knew insects were animals. I showed her my book, and I think she realized she was wrong but was pissed she was outsmarted by her first grader. So she said not to believe everything I read and to stop being so disrespectful. Going off the don't believe everything you read thing. She believes everything she reads on Facebook, but when I try to show her a credible source saying I'm right, like when she didn't believe it was legal to fire someone because they're gay in our state, she pulls that line again. She once slept with onions in her socks because Facebook said it would draw out toxins. I have a lot of succulents, and I water them with a spray bottle, and once she said that she thought it was cool that she could see they had been breathing. I was confused before I realized that she meant the water on the windows behind them. From my spray bottle, she tried to tell me snakes don't have bones. I had a pet snake at the time, and had, as I said before, been obsessed with animals all my life, so I generally know what I'm talking about. I even showed her pictures of snake skeletons and stuff, but she insisted it was fake. She just really hates being wrong, but is usually wrong. Often wrong, never in doubt. I realized my grandfather wasn't very smart, and by extension his daughter, when she relayed to me his wise old story of why black people are bad. My grandfather used to pump gas for a living. This was in the 1910s, 1920s, right at the start of the Great Migration. That's blacks leaving the South for better jobs in the North and West. Basically a lot of white places in the North started getting black neighbors, and he used to be about the black people picking on him. See, what the black people would do is pull up to him, have him pump a single gallon of gas, drive around the block, pull up to him, and have him pump a single gallon of gas. Apparently this happened constantly all day every day, just to waste his time. Just a team of black people saying let's go frick with the white kid down at the gas station. I heard this story for years as an example that black people weren't to be trusted and were shady, and finally one day it clicked. Grandpa can't tell the difference between one black person and another, so a black person at his pump must the exact same one that was there a few minutes ago, and they're just doing IT frick with him. I pointed out that this was probably the case to my mom. G-Pa was long dead by then, but she still maintains there was a massive black conspiracy to make my grandpa do his job. My parents are both smart people. My dad is the manager of a tech support group and my mother is a retired elementary school teacher. What I would say about them is they are well-rounded and their intelligence is specialized to their profession. It's hard to have a conversation with my father that isn't about work or sports. My mother doesn't want to learn anything new and shuts down when she has to figure out something on her own. That's rich coming from a former educator. The way my father treated his peers, with friends, family he's nice, but with his employees he was a jerk. With waiters, salesmen and others, too. My mom didn't know there was a First World War. As a kid, when I asked about it she said that I mixed up the number. It's WW2 not WW1. When I followed up with, then why do we put a 2 at the end, she said, because the war was so big, we have to multiply by 2 to accurately describe it. She was dead serious. And just the other day, she told my 3-year-old niece, her grandchild, that all turkeys came from the country Turkey. She was not joking. I literally don't believe you. My mom was a chaperone on a middle school trip to Philadelphia. Another kid in our group asked her what a Freemason was, and she told them they are people who lay bricks for free. There's a lot of people who think freelancers should be free too. I was having a debate about evolution with my mom years and years ago and she countered one of my points with, okay, so if evolution exists why don't cars and houses evolve? She probably thought that she won because I was too dumbfounded to reply. She's honestly a smart person in general, but is very religious and clearly has never taken the time to learn anything about evolution. Houses have evolved, just not naturally. They fell for the prosperity doctrine. They sent tens of thousands of dollars to televangelists over the past few decades, believing it would come back to them tenfold. Before my dad died of cancer, my mom joined Kenneth Copeland's subscription service, which literally sent her forms to list what she needed healed and had a breakdown of how much money to send based on the severity of the illness. I recently saw an article on Reddit with a video of Kenneth Copeland accepting his new Gulfstream jet and saying God provides. No, he doesn't. Stupid people provide. You take advantage. It's really sad to see my mom trying to make sense of why she didn't get her miracle. There's a difference between intelligence and wisdom, though. My parents were very book smart. My dad had a PhD in engineering and my mom was an artist. They just didn't always do wise things. My mom married my dad for his financial stability. He was in the Navy at the time, and the man my family wanted her to marry, a family friend, was in medical school. She wanted kids, and from the onset, he said he hated children. After 9 years of marriage, she went off birth control because she was lonely. My dad resented me ever since. She did it again 8 years later and had my sister, which my dad forced her to give up for adoption. My dad was a sociopath, pure and simple. He doesn't think he's better than everyone else, he is assured of it. He thinks the rest of us are funny, like we'd think of a puppy falling down a flight of stairs because he got scared of his own foot. Funny in their stupidity. He thinks religion is a fraud, profession certifications are a fraud, the medical industry is a fraud, etc. He is supreme in his intelligence, but he left the Navy because he couldn't get promoted. I was told by one of his fellow shipmates he was the Frank Burns of the crew, trying to befriend power and backstabbing anyone else. He was just really bad at it. My dad has no friends, says he doesn't need them, and job hops every few years, making a crap ton of money as a defense consultant. A real unlikable guy. So yeah, they were smart, but not very wise. He thinks religion is a fraud, profession certifications are a fraud, the medical industry is a fraud, etc. One of the most genuinely intelligent people I know, my friend Eli, has excellent people sense. He told me once that crooks think the whole world is as crooked as they are. When my father told me I was wrong about what I had learned in school about the moon cycles because it was different in the Farmer's Almanac number, my father isn't and never has been a farmer. The Farmer's Almanac, in its modern form, is aimed at people who are not farmers anyway. My father wears his sneakers in the pool and my mother has never laughed. Ever. Not a giggle, not a chuckle, not a tee-hee. Never went ha. Because the first time she saw your father swim that she laughed so hard she's unable to laugh again. My parents are both super smart. They're just not, nor were they ever, great at parenting. It took me until about 25 to really figure this out. Well, I think my mom is brilliant, but doesn't really have a whole lot of people skills, or rather doesn't have a whole lot of tolerance for bulls. If I ever mentioned someone saying something mean to me, she would basically be like, who care, they don't matter. If I was crying about something I would get a stop being so dramatic. But she taught me how to be an adult. I had a savings account when I was kid. I had my first job at 16. Bought my own first car. She taught me to drive. She taught me to fix things, how to do my own taxes, how to handle money and finances, etc. She had a lot of academic interests and she basically raised me to be smart but pretty antisocial. I still have the idea, ingrained in me from childhood, that people are idiots. My dad on the other hand is just stupid. I don't know if he's actually stupid or if his brain is fried from all the drugs during Vietnam, but dang, I knew I was smarter than him when I was in middle school. It seemed like he never knew anything about anything. Like, you could bring up a topic, and he would give you incorrect information and then scream at you if you corrected him. He bought a computer that he didn't know how to use, and never learned how to type. He would use the hunt and peck method, but he would always hit the keys with a pen, which was really annoying and really weird. He talked to random scammers on the internet, and is absolutely one of those people who will fall for the scam call about Microsoft needing to remote into your computer to fix it. Our computer was always full of viruses and malware, and if he had to call tech support, he didn't know what they wanted him to do or what any of the equipment is called and just screamed at them too. A few years ago I worked for an internet service company and he knew I knew stuff about what to do if your internet isn't working and asked me for help, and I just refused to help him because he thinks he knows everything and talks down to you while knowing next to nothing about what is going on. He had to file bankruptcy for his massive amount of credit card debt. He started breeding hoarding dogs. He accused me of breaking their TV when my mom asked me to fix it, and after I mess with it, it wasn't getting one particular channel. Even after I explained to him that isn't how that works. SMH. Basically, I've always known my dad was an idiot. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.